Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the SERMAPod. This is the podcast for the Sports and Entertainment Risk Management Alliance. I am the founder and CEO, Rich Lenkov. I am also frequently the host of the SERMAPod, but today I am very pleased to have another one of our members hosting. Rebecca Adelman is with Adelman Firm, adelmanfirm.com. She is a very valued member of SERMA, has been a member for many years, very involved in lots of our content, and brought to us a great idea for a podcast. We're really excited to have this one because, as our loyal listeners and viewers and members know, SERMA is constantly growing. We have our new member Mondays every Monday. You see a lot of new faces, but we are particularly interested in growth overseas. We've got lots of great members in other countries besides the United States, Canada, Great Britain, but also our newest members are from about 6,000 miles from where I'm sitting, Rebecca, Nigeria. I want to introduce to everyone very valued and special guests and very valued new members of SERMA, Father Theodore Ihenetu and Stanley Ukaga. I hope I got those right, guys. We practiced beforehand.
You got it right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. You're our first guests from Nigeria. You're our first members from Africa, so we're really honored and pleased to have you. And we're going to talk today about a really interesting idea, building a sports and entertainment risk management program in Nigeria, much different than doing it in the United States. You've got some interesting challenges, interesting opportunities. We're going to get into all of those and learn a lot. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rebecca to kick off our discussion.
Rich, thanks.
Here.
And I'm just always so ever grateful to be anywhere you are, Rich. So thanks for all you do for SERMA and beyond SERMA. So I'm really excited about today. As Rich said, I'm Rebecca Adelman. And the way I know these gentlemen is we have been collaborating, Father Theo, Engineer Stan, and I, and our organizations have been collaborating for quite some time now on risk management programs in the healthcare space. When we started sort of discussing the sports and entertainment landscape in Nigeria, and listeners may not be familiar with that, you're going to learn something about it today. We talked about sort of the growing sports culture, the growing entertainment industry, and these gentlemen are going to share how they have had an opportunity to have multiple conversations across spaces on building a risk management program in Nigeria across sports and across entertainment. So, and I think one thing that's interesting too is a lot of youth engagement in Nigeria, population young, sports and entertainment are really sort of also primary pathways for economic opportunity, which I think is important. And then also just, unique risk factors that might be some intersection here in the United States. In any event, I just want to welcome you guys. You're on my super favorites list and are very near and dear to me and my family and in our workspace. So welcome to the podcast and welcome into this space here in the United States with SERMA. So I'd like you guys to introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are. Tell us who you are and how these ideas were born.
Okay. I'm so happy to be here. First of all, my name is Reverend Father Theodore Ihenetu, a Catholic priest from Owerri, Imo State, Nigeria. My journey towards the risk management in sports and then entertainment didn't start with risk management in entertainment and then sports, rather in caregiving. In caregiving, where we train family caregivers into the risk management in healthcare and then in senior living. And then through the instrumentality of Rebecca Adelman, and then by the introduction of guide paths into the Nigerian system and then healthcare system, we're able to train caregivers into risk management in healthcare. That through my nonprofit Rapid Adult Care, we try to take care of older adults. But then they translated into something else. When I had a conversation with a younger or with a group of boys who are boxing athletes, I was asking them, guys, how do you guys manage injuries that come out of these sporting events? They said, this is a very risky game. But the irony of the whole thing is, if you get injured, you are on your own. That's wild me. If you get injured, you're on your own. So what happens to insurance policy? What happens to the problem of the system? When there is system or infrastructural risk, they said, oh, the system we are into, they don't care. So If you wound yourself, you are on your own. So with that, I said, so how are we going to help you? The young man, they made a very passionate appeal. Since you are into healthcare and then training caregivers into risk management, I think that there is something universal about risk. Why don't you teach us how to manage risk around us while we are playing the game? So that was how we got into conversation with this issue of risk management in sports and entertainment. So I had to reach out to my friend, Engineer Stan, who is also a specialist, and then he has been involved in sports and sporting events. What do we do? Look at the request some young guys made to us. Stan said, okay, why don't we consult Rebecca since she is a specialist in this area? So that was how the conversation all started. So we are so excited to be here and to implement something new in the Nigerian system and then the Nigerian economy too.
And Stan, great segue into you.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Stanley Ukaga, easy way to pronounce it. Engineer by training, spent a bunch of years in the oil and gas industry, in the entertainment world, business development, and now went into healthcare. I actually started with medical care, medical products manufacturing. We manufacture some supplements, natural supplements, organic supplements. Then from there, that went into the caregiving world with Father Theo, and as he mentioned, our relationship with Rebecca, where we now train caregivers, and we also do handle some vulnerable elders. We call them orphaned elders, those who have nobody really looking after them. We have a few of them who we take care of. Food, medicine. We even built a house for one who had no home. So from there, the conversation went into, that's what you had mentioned, those who are in sports sort of came out and said, hey, how can you guys help us? And then we said, okay, let's look at it. And then we came back to Rebecca and said, hey, Rebecca, since you are in this risk management area already, how do we look into the sports, those in the sports world? That's when she now mentioned that she knew somebody rich, and the conversation from there got started. So that's in a nutshell. I'm just trying to keep it brief.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, that's who I am.
Yeah, and we'll learn more about you.
Been there, done that.
We'll learn more about you all along the way. So the real burning question of the day is, how is it we start in Nigeria? What's the plan for growing a risk management program in sports and entertainment in Nigeria? How are we gonna do this? So let's talk for a little bit. I think we've got about 15 minutes left, and let's just talk about how to build it from scratch, because really that's what we're doing in many ways.
Yeah, in my thoughts, building a risk management in sports and then entertainment industry, I think the first thing we have to do is to identify who are the stakeholders, who are the real stakeholders in sports and entertainment industry. So we could say the stakeholders here could be the athletes themselves and then performers. We have the coaches and the trainers. So, and then government agencies and then insurance companies. We could gather them together, have interviews with them, and then sell up this idea of risk management in sports so that we can converge all of them to start up something that will be implemented here. So that is in a nutshell how we intend to go about it, through stakeholders
and
engagement.
Stan, we know that stakeholder mapping is really about understanding relationships and influence, right? So we were having an interesting sort of pre-call about the role that national law enforcement plays. Tell us some more about that, how national law enforcement in Nigeria shows up as a stakeholder when it comes to risk management.
Okay, yeah. Nigeria, there may be only 2 or 3 nationwide private sports academies. Every other sports academy is on the states or the national government. So again, we don't have armed private security. Every major sports event is secured by the police. And it's one police, there's a national police, a federal police, there's no state police. There's no local government police, a national police. So you find that unlike maybe in the US where you have private security firms who could do crowd management, event security management. All that is done by the national police. So what we've tried to do is start a conversation already with the state police command and the head of the sports, the OC, the officer in charge of sports for the whole entire state police command. And our thought is that if we get their buy-in, start working with them, it trickles down because the state police command, you automatically you have built credibility. You know, the police are with you. They're doing this. They're carrying this out. Government net buys into that immediately because it's an easy step from the police to the government. Because again, the government is every government institution, every government agency, every senior government official is guarded by police. It's not again private security. You know, it's guarded by the police. So from the governor, police, the secretary to the state government, everybody is police, police, police. So my thinking was if we key in with the police, it becomes easy to sell that to the government and the regulators down to the coaches. Even the stadium where Father Theo was talking about earlier is a government stadium. It's owned by the government. There's no privately owned stadium in the country. So all the athletes there are members of the State Sports Commission, and they're signing into the State Sports Commission. And again, it becomes easy. You know, ours is a little bit different because once you get government buy-in, you get the police buy-in, you more or less rule out in one state and it can be replicated across the whole country. So that's our thought. That's what we want to think it can go.
And, you know, the idea of like sort of being able to centralize the origins or a grassroots, risk management initiative. It's not really an initiative. It's not even a program. It's like a whole initiative. One of the things I was thinking, because we were going to talk about a vulnerability assessment, some kind of gap analysis seems like it'd be the next thing that we do, is once we get the stakeholders lined up, we get a gap analysis done. But it seems to me to be that if safety and, is already living with our key stakeholders, right? Being able to manage safety and security and sort of being able to be a key benchmark and be part of the gap analysis. It seems to me that that's, we have a more direct way of really knowing what the gaps are as opposed to sort of guessing at what the gaps are, because we've got, sort of the national body in there with us as a partner. I mean, is that how you're seeing it in terms of how we do an assessment of where we can start to create risk management initiatives?
I believe once we have an outline. Okay, Father, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm with you.
Father, go ahead.
Okay. In terms of conducting a vulnerability study, I had an interaction with a chaplain for athletes in the States. And then I shared an idea with him that we are trying to introduce risk management in sports and then entertainment. What do you think about it? And he was so excited because he said there is no implementation of some kind of physical safety protocols in the system. And then you find out that the athletes themselves, they are vulnerable. And then once they got themselves injured, no one takes care of them. So we get to introduce them into the idea of trying to be conscious of risk around them. Let them first of all be conscious about risk around them before they talk about the government or the system trying to protect them or to give them insurance policies. So with that kind of interaction and conversation, we discovered that through interviews and then stakeholders engagement, we'll be able to find out where the gaps really are and then how to fill them up as we go on.
Stan, do you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, Father Theodore has addressed it. As he pointed out, primary stakeholders are the athletes, coaches, and the trainers. Once we get their buy-in, which wouldn't be difficult because we're actually coming to solve a major problem for them. As he said, when they get injured here, unless the state government picks up their bill 9 times out of 10, they're on their own. They have to fix their own, sort their own health problems out. So getting their buy-in, getting in on insurance companies, insurance company, all companies to, buy into it, getting a lawyer, a risk assessment lawyer, risk management lawyer, legal counsel for them. It's like a step-by-step process. Then they get the secondary stakeholders, who are the government officials who own the events, who own the stadia. We now get them involved, and that's where the police now come in, because if we have that good relationship with the police athletes, when I mentioned the cops, I'm talking about the police athletes. Every police department in the states in the 36 states of Nigeria, has a police department for sports. Of course, the police do have athletes. Even one of the more famous ones is Mary Onyali. If you Google her, I think she's been Olympic medal, bronze and silver, about twice. You get me? So they do have police athletes who have gotten to the Olympics. So once we get that primary guys done, the athletes themselves, get the police involved, get the government involved, then we now start talking in terms of, okay, what's the best practices to put in place? And that's where we need guidance from Rich and his team. Yeah, Selma. Start with sports, then move on to entertainment.
And this is where I love to show up the most. Like, once all the homework's done, then we can design a program, written risk management standards, protocols tailored to Nigeria, training curriculum for coaches, training curriculum for operators, event planners, athletes, etc., and start to do the pilots just like we all did together, running a pilot. And I think that's really important. Our pilot for ourselves on our risk management program was very successful, and we were able to, before we scaled, and now we're scaled. So I'm really excited about that. I know Rich has got a few things to say, but I think we sort of laid it out, get the stakeholders lined up, do a vulnerabilities assessment, sort of run some scenarios of, what are we looking ahead toward potential risks, and then start to build out the solutions and the education and the training. I mean, to me, that sounds like a solid foundation for where we're headed. Rich, so that answers the question of the podcast. How do you build a risk management program in Nigeria from scratch? So anyway, I know you want to kind of move us into a forward-looking end note here. So I'll turn it over back to you. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time with me today.
Yeah. No, really interesting. I mean, what I'm hearing is, I think any risk manager listening to this would agree with what you're trying to do, but maybe you're starting from scratch, a little bit different resources. But the key, as you mentioned, is like consistency, reliability, routine, right? The way you're going to get a successful program in this space is just doing it and following a certain protocol, much as you did in your space. I think that's important in sports and entertainment also. And, I think that as these issues become even more global. I mean, they already are, right? But I think that the obstacles and the barriers and the boundaries between different country sports and entertainment programs, become less important. And it's a little bit easier to scale now that a lot of what we're doing is global, right? So I think you've got some challenges, but I think the good news is there's lots of resources. And of course, SERMA is a resource for you now that you're members. So we're thrilled to have you and thrilled to continue on your journey, and we'll do some follow-ups as we progress here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Well, Father Theodore and Stan, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being members, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening to another episode of the SERMAPod.